It is time. Arkansas Mood Tracker. I went a different direction on this one. I also hit up the Arkansas board today, got a lot of good suggestions on mood. Cautious optimism abounded there, but there's also, here's what's fun about Arkansas. There's this rogue nature about Arkansas right now, and it's due in large part to the way they just got treated by the conference, and it seems like the entire world this past year. About to talk about that, but my mood for Arkansas right now is what I have termed Russian satellite energy. Now, this has actually nothing to do with Russia, but it does have a lot to do with the movie Armageddon. Remember when all hope seemed to be lost in the movie Armageddon? Spoiler alert, it's only 20 years old for those of you who haven't seen it. When all seemed to be lost and Gracie was never going to see Bruce Willis again and Ben Affleck, and they were just going to die, and then everyone was going to die. It was just going to be a whole bunch of death. It was a global killer, as Billy Bob Thornton said. And then all of a sudden, there's this some guy, he's working at NASA, he's like fifth string, he's probably making under $250,000 a year, so basically ramen noodling his way through life, and he says, hold up, finger in the ear, I got some magic happening, I'm bouncing a signal off a Russian satellite, and all of a sudden, there's Bruce Willis. All of NASA had lost communication with the shuttle, but then we just have to bounce a signal off a Russian satellite, and there's Bruce Willis, and he gets to tell his daughter goodbye. I'm about to have to blow up this asteroid and save the world. Well, how in the world does that tie into Arkansas football? Well, I want you to think about something this last year, because it all seemed lost for Arkansas. First off, already you had a new coaching staff coming in, and this is not the end of 2020, mind you. This is not revisionist history time. Very few people believed in Sam Pittman when he got there. And there were questions amongst some of the fan base when he got there. They love Sam Pittman. As a personality, they love him. He fit the culture. They all knew that. We all knew that. You didn't even have to be an Arkansas fan to know that. But there was a question of, is this guy the right guy to help us compete in the most rabid and toughest conference in America, the toughest division in the toughest conference in America? And then, not only do you have that, of course, like any other new staff out there, you're dealt a crippling blow with the entire COVID situation, and no one really takes it easy on you. And then the SEC says, oh, by the way, Sam, is that your name? Sam Pittman? Yeah, cool. We're going to give you a new schedule, and we're going to have you play Alabama and Georgia and Florida and the Chiefs and the Patriots and pretty much everyone else. Have fun. Oh, and by the way, don't think for a second that you're going to actually win any of these games. Well, in Arkansas, they got kind of bold, and they said, you know what? Like, we're going to undo the top 3 buttons, and we're going to go beat Mississippi State. And then we're going to go beat Auburn. And the SEC said, no, you're not. You're not going to beat Auburn. You may think you've got Auburn beaten, but we're overturning this call, and we're overturning the game in the process. Go home. Go home. And so all seemed lost, okay? World's about to end, aforementioned metaphor to Armageddon, and then you just start bouncing that signal off the Russian satellite. And we got some magic happening. And Arkansas was competitive the whole year. And they go 3-7, which doesn't sound impressive to an outsider. Well, that's fine. Be an outsider. But if you're on the ground in Fayetteville, you understand how low the expectation level was. There were people out there floating an over-under win total of 1.5 for you. So you win 3, but I don't just want to talk about the 3 that they won. You know, they also lost, they lost 3 more games by a combined 7 points. So, I mean, that was a really competitive team all year. They didn't challenge Alabama. They weren't supposed to challenge Alabama. But this is their schedule, and this is their record last year. Look late in the year. I mean, they lost by 3 to the defending national champ. They had a wild game at Missouri. We were victimized in the pocketbook by that one. 50-48. This was really competitive. They played Texas A&M 42-31. This was a competitive team all year. And you know what it's done? It's frustrated some SEC fans, and it reminds me a lot of Mississippi State, Michigan State. Arkansas starting to remind me a little bit of Michigan State under a guy named Mark D'Antonio. Hasn't been all that long ago. You guys remember. Michigan, Ohio State out-recruiting Michigan State every year. Michigan State is a team that's supposed to know their role, and they're supposed to be a nice, scrappy, competitive bunch, but they're ultimately supposed to take their 2 or 3 touchdown loss, go back to East Lansing. You can win your out-of-conference games, go challenge Iowa or Minnesota, but you're not supposed to challenge the big boys. And Mark D'Antonio turned that entire dynamic, especially the Michigan State dynamic, but in some years, even the Michigan State versus Ohio State with Urban Meyer dynamic. It was like watching someone try and defeat a bowling ball with a flamethrower. That's what it looked like a lot of times in the Big Ten, because you had this team full of 2- and 3-star no-names, and then you got a litany of guys who are about to go in the first and second round of the draft, and Michigan State just won. They just found these ugly, hideous ways to win. And people in the Big Ten got mad because we don't care if you try hard. We don't care if you're a nice, solid story. You're not supposed to be winning these games. Like, we don't want you in the spotlight. It's just Michigan State. We need these big brand names in the spotlight. That's what Arkansas started to be on the precipice of doing last year. Not against Alabama, in the end, not against Georgia, but they started to knock on some doors that they're really not expected to knock on, not supposed to knock on. Now, here's the key moving forward. Will Sam Pittman maintain that identity and be able to maintain that theme? Because there was no big secret about Arkansas in 2020. This is kind of what gives me a little bit of optimism. There was no threading of the needle. There was nothing overly fancy. I don't think that very many opposing staffs stayed up late, the night before they're playing Arkansas, pulling their hair out, trying to figure out what they're doing schematically. It was none of that. It was just they kind of had a sum greater than the individual part sort of bowling ball mentality. And now offensively, the style was far from that. But I'm talking about collectively, philosophically, that's kind of what it was. That's what it has to be in the future for Arkansas. But here's what has a lot of their fans excited. This is exactly how they want to go about it. They refuse to know their role, and they exist in their own ecosystem. See, for a while, when they brought Brett Bielema in, it was ludicrous because they brought him in and they basically tried to bring in someone who could try and out-Alabama. Well, that's stupid at Arkansas. You're not going to do that. So you got all the incentive in the world to do it a different way. Exist in your own ecosystem there. Don't be part of the SEC East or West or SEC as a whole. Don't try and do a version of what they do. Just do Arkansas. Just be you and refuse to know your role. Number one, if you do it, the fan base will love you for it. They went 3-7 this past year. Entire fan base is jacked about the future of the program. You got some programs that put up a better record and they'll struggle to sell tickets this upcoming year, even if stadiums are open to full capacity. So love where Arkansas is, because even if you're not buying them to make a certain caliber bowl game, that's not an easy out. I can tell you right now, there are a lot of programs of greater acclaim, let's just say, in the SEC that the big-time programs would rather face if they had to play this Saturday than Arkansas. Records don't reflect it, but the attitude collectively of the team reflects it. Now, lastly, before we move on and close the show, actually, I want you to pay attention to this. Sam Pittman, pretty quietly, has made some staff moves up there. It's because of recruiting. They just locked up a class that was way better than I thought they'd lock up, to be brutally honest with you. It was. I thought they'd be floating in the 30 range, teens, 20s range. So good for Sam Pittman. The guy's going to recruit. I don't have any doubt about that. They've made some moves on the staff to up their recruiting game more. They know what they have to do. Like, they know, you're not going to bubblegum and paperclip your way through the SEC West, but they know if we get a certain caliber athlete here, we don't have to beat Alabama for a lot of kids. Let's just get in the ballpark, and then we're going to put Arkansas in them, and it's going to be good enough. I don't know how. Don't ask me. We may get outgained by 100 yards here and win by 3. We may turn it over twice and still win by 7 over here. We're going to find ways to win games because, from Sam Pittman's perspective, we're Arkansas. That's what we do.